Well, hello, and good morning. Welcome to the Big Show, hosted by me, Jimmy Smith. Alongside of me is my co-host and the host of Pissed Off Parent, Dwayne Ward.
What up?
The Big Show is a podcast where we discuss men's issues like men's health, masculinity, the hard truth about dating, and what makes a man a man. Let's get this Big Show started today. So, Dwayne, good morning. How are you, sir?
I am doing fantastic. And yourself?
Doing good. We're going to talk about some pretty cool stuff today. I've had a couple one-on-one consultations this week with some people on some of the coaching that I do, and I'm starting to see kind of a common denominator over this last, maybe a couple years. And I've noticed that there's a lot of unhappy people out there. You know, people are unhappy with their careers, they're unhappy with their dating lives, they're unhappy with the state of the economy right now. They're just not in the best moods, I guess. And you can make an argument that you can understand why, but I'll tell you, it gets me thinking, because part of my job is to help people become, better versions of themselves. And Everyone wants to be in a better mood. Everyone wants to be healthier. Everyone wants to be happier. And
so what you're saying is REM got it wrong.
REM got it wrong.
Smiley people, okay, they were wrong.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So, I want people to be happy, of course, and we want to be happy, but what is this whole happiness thing about? I mean, how do we achieve this happiness? Because it's such a fleeting thing. I mean, what makes one person happy this month could make the same person unhappy next month. The ebbs and flows of life is just, they're so volatile and they're so in your face that it's really hard to not only achieve happiness, but more importantly, sustain happiness.
I mean, trying to be happy. And again, our society is really moving towards that. I have to have the feels all the time. I've got to be like uber happy, or what's the cool word that the youngins are saying now? They've always got to be totally happy and everything's got to be awesome and stuff like that. And when you're not at that plateau of just peak happiness, there's no contentment or middle ground, and it's either I'm super happy or I'm down the dumps and just hating life and looking for your next happiness. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And also too, whenever you're trying to find happiness and you can't reach it, you start to turn to things that make you have quick happiness, like porn, like drugs, like alcohol. You turn to, adoration and non-sexual attention of people on social media. Yep. You look at all these things that give you this little boost of endorphins that make you really kind of feel good. But what happens is whenever that's over with, it's a very shallow happiness.
Very.
And it doesn't sustain that happiness for a long time. And what happens is we're seeing more and more young people, more and more men, more and more women fall into depression. I don't know if you know this, but nearly 1/4 of all the population, especially for females, are on some sort of psychiatric medication. They're on something for depression or anxiety. And with me being a medical clinic director, I see people's medical histories firsthand and what their current medications are. And it sounds about right. I mean, a lot of my patients are females because I'm in the weight loss business. And so a lot of my patients happen to be females. And that sounds about right, about 25%.
So you're saying 75% of women are running around unmedicated? No, you know what? I have to do it. Let the hate come. Let the hate come. The jokes are there. I got to do it.
But, let the hate flow through you, the exactly.
anger. Right, it's weird because, on TV, everywhere you go, everyone's like pushing depression medication and different kinds of depression medication. I've got stories in my background. I am very anti-medication in general. It took a lot for me to start taking baby aspirin. I mean, I just, again, with the issues I grew up with as a child and seeing my mother, my dad emptying trash bags full of mental pills or whatever to get rid of, because back in the 70s and 80s they didn't have the computer system that linked everything up. So my mom, just going to give some story here, she had her pedigree. She was manic depressant, schizophrenia with bipolar. I think that's her pedigree. Yeah, and a couple other stuff that they never diagnosed in her. But she would go to doctor after doctor after doctor and tell them whatever, and they would just push whatever they were getting the most bonus check for or whatever that week. And she would actually have trash bags full of pills, and it fried her brain. My ex-wife, I mean, I see people every day. So I have a huge, challenge issue, whatever you want to call it, with any kind of medication, especially in that arena. I mean, I understand that there's a time and a place. If your entire world gets turned upside down and you've got to have at least something to get you through the day for a short window of time, I don't like it, but I understand it. But the level of medication that's out there for depressed people is, for me personally, it's scary.
Yeah, it is scary, because there's a lot of people out there that are going to the doctor trying to get that artificial high, they're trying to get that artificial mood, leveler, if you will. And people are becoming dependent on this stuff.
Oh, yeah, it rewires your brain.
It sure does.
It's some crazy stuff. And if you've ever been around anyone that has been either started taking certain pharmaceuticals and then 6 months, a year, 2 years later, 10 years later, that those long-term things, scare the crap out of me. I mean, we're becoming a heavily medicated society to where we're dependent on that, because like for certain medications, you can't quit those things. If you quit them cold turkey, they're going to mess you up. I mean, I don't know if you have a background or have dealt with that. I've got scary stories.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily I haven't had to deal with that all too much, but I have heard of some pretty horror stories out there. I mean, if you're anything like me, Dwayne, you've probably spent a large part of your life chasing happiness, like a lot of people have. Trying to make decisions that bring you the best outcomes and therefore more happiness. I mean, hey, I know where people are coming from. I get it, because I used to believe that life was all about feeling good, being happy, achieving all of my hopes and dreams and fantasies, but what I've discovered in the years I've been alive is that none of that is really true. In fact, I've discovered that the truth about life for a man is that we're forged through suffering and sacrifice. You and I did a podcast on it a couple weeks back, and we talked about the benefits of suffering and how it's so important, especially for men. But, happiness comes through the ability of being able to do life's challenges and coming out good on the other end and being proud of that. You kind of gauge your what you give up in order to achieve it. Your pride comes from that. If something was easy to do, it's hard to take a lot of pride in it. But if you had to really give up a lot in order to achieve something, you really are prideful for what you've accomplished. Oh, yeah. We've all been conditioned to look for pleasure and happiness. And, we see it all around us with people, who are so-called happy on social media, just like you pointed out. You can't even scroll through Instagram or Facebook without seeing people with all their wonderful lives posting it out for the world to see. It seems like everybody is happy on social media. So of course, you've also will feel the need to pursue that happiness as well. You then turn on TV, and what do you see there? You see a bunch of people there that, you think that everyone's happy on TV as well. You got these reality shows. And so Instagram people are happy. You turn on the TV, people are happy. And it starts to make you think, that you need to also pursue happiness. I mean, I guess that's the American dream, right? The pursuit of happiness. Yeah. But I mean, honestly, haven't we all tried that? We've all tried to pursue happiness. And I got to tell you that chasing happiness is really fruitless. Not once have I ever achieved something that actually gave me long-lasting happiness.
Right.
I've achieved things that give me short-term, but nothing long-lasting. I've achieved a whole lot of things that I thought was going to make me happy when I got there. And I figured that if I'm not happy now, then maybe it's just me, but I've heard this
one of those things. Well, like, what was one of the things that when you were younger, and I'm assuming it was a time thing, but what was one of the things that you went, what, if I do X or get X or whatever that is, I'll be happy. And then now, on the other side of 40, you're going, yeah, that was a kind of a pointless endeavor, or it was. Yeah.
I remember in high school, I thought that my life was not going to be fulfilled if I wasn't popular. I thought that my life wasn't going to be fulfilled if I didn't make the football team.
Right.
I didn't think my life would be fulfilled if I didn't make it as a starter. And I accomplished all those things, and I realized that none of it really brought me happiness. You
Yeah.
know, it really didn't. I mean, I thought that when I got out of high school, chasing money would make me happy. I thought that chasing, the management titles would make me happy. And it just all it did was bring about its own set of issues and problems.
Yeah.
I thought that chasing women would make me happy. I thought that conquering women and would make me happy. And it's just one of those little here today, gone tomorrow happiness thing. And you're chasing the next woman the next week, I guess. It's just, and that's what I mean. I mean, what have we done out there that's truly had long lasting happiness? And I really can't think of many things outside of maybe, relationships and children and things like that. I mean, I figure that if I'm not happy now, then, after achieving these things, then maybe it's something that's wrong with me. But then the older I get, the more I realize that this is actually the case with a lot of people who become quote unquote successful in their lives.
Right.
And
Well, it's
so
how
I
you measure
realized,
success. I mean, people will measure success one way or the other. I know people that measure success by how big their bank account is, or how many
yep,
women they've been with, or how many men they've been with, or what toy they have, cars, speedboat, whatever, or vacations. That's how they measure it. For me, earlier on, I mean, I always looked for, and I'm going to steal directly from Dave Ramsey. It's kind of weird. I knew a lot about Dave Ramsey before Dave Ramsey was even a thing. But
that's the finance guy, right?
yeah, that's the Christian finance dude. He's been around, I think, 15 some odd years. And actually, I did a lot of the Dave Ramsey stuff back when I was like in my early 20s. Before Dave Ramsey was, no one ever. I mean, he wasn't even around doing. He was still. He was selling real estate at that point. He wasn't even into the what he does now. But I had found financial advisors and or finance information, and I started going on that path. But one of the things that I had said then that Dave Ramsey says now, we'll argue about who said it first. I think he'll get credit for it, but contentment. That's the big thing, and how you define your success is for some people it's leaving a legacy. Some people it's fixing something or leaving something. Well, a legacy. It can be through of course children or work that you do in the community, stuff like that. Is different ways to measure success. And I think also as you get older, you start looking at that the legacies and the what kind of what can I impart, what knowledge or what can I do to make the world a better place before I go meet Jesus. And that's as I get older, that's kind of the way I've been for decades, but that's kind of how I look at things.
Yeah, and everybody has their own little version of what that would look like.
Yeah.
The pressure of fitting in and running with the crowd has gotten many of us chasing money. That's the one in particular that a lot of people seem to chase. And, we see these people on social media, happy, and they're out there doing something nice. Maybe they're on vacation, and we think, well, you have to have money to be able to fly to Europe. You got to have money to be able to fly to the Keys.
Yep.
We turn on TV and we look at these shows on TV where these so-called reality stars are living in huge houses and driving expensive cars, and like their lives are seemingly nothing but a series of just a few arguments with their friends, and that's about the hardship they have to go through. And you think to yourself, well, shoot, I wish I was filthy rich and all I had to do was argue and have a little bit of drama in my life. I'll take that deal any day. But
see, my wife and I, we do watch trash TV. That is one of our guilty pleasures. We'll watch 90 Day Fiance, Love After Lockup, The Other Way, the whole 90 Day Fiance, The Other Way, and all that stuff, and Cheaters. We watch, and we sit there, and we both, again, my wife very red pilled, did really good with her, and the stuff you're talking about is in her because even last night we're sitting here watching, I think 90 Day Fiance, the Darcy Stacy thing that's on, and we're always like, how are they affording to do this? Because like these people's lives are like one big party right after the other. I mean, like Stacy and Darcy, they're twins. They were on 90 Day Fiance. It's a big thing. Actually, I think they're down in Miami, Florida right now, or have been. And like they jet set to New York for a bachelorette party. They go get get waxings done and all this stuff. And I'm like, how the hell can these people afford those things? I mean, we watch Honey Boo Boo. June, Mama June from Hot to Not or
Yeah.
whatever, and we're
Yeah.
like, how the? And we asked the question, how the hell can they afford these things? Because they don't work, they don't do whatever. I mean, obviously it's sponsorships and stuff like that, but it's all fake. I
Yeah.
mean, but then you have people that are watching TV going, "Wow, I deserve to go do this. I deserve to go do that," and they end up putting themselves in a bad spot because they're maxing their credit cards out, or they don't have they no one can sustain that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
And I've actually had the pleasure of being a part of a couple of reality shows myself where
really,
I have, yeah, and I've witnessed the filming of it, and I was even an actor in a few reality shows. One in particular that I'm thinking about was an RV show where you would have these families come up and they want to buy the RV. It's kind of like the
uh-huh.
house ones where the salesperson will pick three houses and then they'll finally settle on one house and buy it, whatever. Well, just
Uh-huh.
picture that, but for RVs. And so I'm the salesperson in this reality show, and I think I filmed like 5 episodes or something. And you know, the producer Jason would I would meet with him in the morning, and he would literally say, "Jimmy, this is the Johnson family. Hey, hi, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm Jimmy. I'm Jimmy." And Jason would literally say, "Okay, so you're going to show them this one, and this one, and then they're going to pick that one at the end."
Oh wow, that staged.
That's staged.
Wow. Okay.
Everything was staged, including their budget. Now, what they did for a living sometimes was what they actually did for a living.
Uh-huh.
Like I had a firefighter family. I had there was a family who did some auctioneers where he did the guy where he talks real fast. Come on now, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
that whatever that's called. They legitimately did that for a living, and then the film crew would fly up to their house and film them at work so that way they could have the footage. But their
Right.
budget was not the budget. I mean, some of these people were just they were broke, and they're asking me for $250,000 RVs in this particular situation, and they couldn't finance cheese on a cheeseburger. So
Wow.
it's I want people to understand that what we see on TV and what we see on social media is nothing more than what people want you to see.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not it's not reality. A lot of these people just do not have the money to fund the lifestyle in which they're trying to make us all believe they live.
Yeah.
And so what we would do in this reality show is that, I would show them these RVs, and all the reactions were real. They would walk
Mhm.
into it for the first time and they would ooh and ah and things like
Right.
that. But at the end of the day, they would go over to the little table and I'd be over here, and then they would film them talking over there. Well, which one do you like? Well, the blue one had the space that we wanted, but the green one had all the horsepower that we would look for. And I can see our kids on this one because that one had a bunk bed floor plan. And they do the whole song and dance, and they go, well, you know
Right.
what you want? I know what I want. Well, let's go tell Jimmy. And they come back and they go, all right, folks, so which one'd you pick? And they're like, we picked that one. Good choice.
Right.
And we would end the filming and I'd shake their hand and they would go to their car and drive the F home.
Wow.
They're
Okay.
not driving home in an RV. They didn't buy the
Right.
RV. That's my point. They're not really purchasing these things, these items. So
Isn't
I
this
want people, huh?
Well, isn't this like I guess the digital version of Keeping Up with the Joneses? I mean, again, I'm going, for the older folk out there, we used to call it, Keeping Up with the Joneses. So, like, you would buy your house, and then all your friends would buy the bigger house. They could barely, they couldn't even afford it, but you wanted to be just like them. So you overspent on your house, your car, your whatever. And it's the
Yeah.
whole Keeping Up with the Joneses. And it's all a facade. It's all fake.
Exactly. It's all just a big, huge facade. You're right. And so what we do is we're left looking at our own place. We're
Hmm.
left looking at the beat up car that we're driving, and we feel bad that we don't compare. So
Right.
now what we do is we start to chase money because we feel inadequate, and we
Right.
spend our entire lives chasing money. And
Hmm.
does money really make us happy? Well, yes and no. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. And here's what I mean. I mean, I've done studies because if Dwayne and I are going to do podcasts, it's a burden of him and myself to make sure that we're actually doing the studying to make sure that the
Right.
things that come out of our mouths are actually factual based on science, data, and statistics, and not just anecdotal experience or just making crap up, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't have this study particularly in front of me, but I've read it a couple times, and it was a study done on the correlation between money, income, and happiness, right?
Right.
And when you're at the bottom and you're making 10, 20 grand a year, there is a direct correlation, causation even of happiness. But when that number got to $75,000 a year, the correlation between extra money and happiness
started getting separated.
Yeah, it was a law of diminishing returns. It didn't produce the same amount of happiness. So you go back to my question: does money make you happy? Well, I guess it depends. If you're in the lower income or middle income class, it does to about $75,000.
All right,
and then once you get into the upper middle class or higher class, there's no direct correlation between it. And I believe that the reason behind it, I don't know this to be true, but whenever you are making $75,000, right? That's more than the national average. The average income earner in America is like 55 or 54.
Yeah, right in that number. Yeah.
For females, it's a little less, but for males, it's somewhere around 55, 54. So if you're making 75 grand a year, you're probably in the top 40% of income earners. That's my assumption. I don't know the actual stats on it, but you're above the bell curve, and you're not exactly wondering where the next meal is going to take place. You have enough money that if you're just not a complete idiot and you budget yourself right, you can pay your mortgage or your rent, you can pay your car note, you can pay your cell phone and your bills, and go out to eat a couple times and even take a vacation or two if you budget it right. So if you go from 75 to 175 grand, I guess the argument there would be, well, what more can you buy? Well, I guess you just buy a bigger, better version of what you already have. Like you buy a bigger house or a nicer car or nicer clothes, a better gym instead of the gym. You go to the really super nice yacht club or something. You take more vacations or better vacations. It's not like you have a whole lot of stuff that you're buying brand new, except for maybe like, more cars or maybe a boat or something, things like that. But the point is that you're likely just buying bigger, better, shinier versions of what you already have.
Yeah, more things that you don't need. I mean, and then, the people have talked about it, and there are people that can never outrun their income. I mean, they could make $1 million a year and they'll still be broke. I mean, they don't know how to budget. They don't know how to be content with what they have. They're always looking for that new shiny object. And you got people that that are high income earners, and what they do is they end up they get into the service the thing where everything becomes a service. They DoorDash all the time. They won't eat at McDonald's. They'll eat at high end restaurants. Their kids they'll start splurging there or start doing a number of things. I mean, some do more donations and for good things with it, but for the most part, they end up just blowing the money is what it usually boils down to. Because they don't budget. Most Americans, speaking of the American group, most Americans don't budget. They live less than paycheck to paycheck. When I say less than paycheck, I mean they're like, it's not even paycheck to paycheck anymore. They're like scrambling on Wednesday for their Friday paycheck. It's gotten that bad because they're the poor money management skills. But you got people that just can't. They're wanting to be happy, and they're spending so much trying to find that happiness, and they're broke and miserable.
I know a lot of wealthy people who just have a ton of money, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I even know some of them making 7 figures and 8 figures a year. And I will tell you that when you talk to them, they're not so much happier than the people making 50 grand a year.
Right.
And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that I wouldn't take the money. I'm not saying that all of us shouldn't take the money. What I'm saying, though, I mean, because life becomes a whole lot easier when you have a bunch of money, and your options become better. You have liberties that are not there when you do not have as much money.
Right.
So I'm not saying that forget money. Don't worry about it. What I'm saying that in terms of happiness, true unbridled happiness, long sustainable happiness. And there's not a correlation there. I'll tell you a quick story because this one's on the top of my mind because I met it with her just recently. I have a very good, close, long-term female friend, known her for many, many years. And for the longest time, she's been trying to build this business that she started 20 years ago. And she made anywhere between 50 and 75 at most, on any given year. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of struggles, things like that. She grinded. I met up with her this week actually, and had a conversation with her and asked her how the business is doing. And she goes, it's doing really well. And I said, well, that's awesome. And how well is it doing? She goes, Jimmy, it's doing really well.
Very good. Yeah.
So I said, all right, well, how much you making? Because I know her income, right? Because we've talked about it for many years, and it was a part of the consultations and things like that. And I could tell she was being humble, and I wanted to force her to be proud of herself. So she tells me what her income is, and it must be 5 or 6 times what I thought what it was last time. She's making hundreds of thousands of so much. I went, what? Whoa. Are you serious? Are you really? Are you serious right now?
Shirt like one more notch.
Yeah, I'm like, there, baby. There's no ring here, and you are looking fine, baby. You are looking fine. Did you do something to your hair or something? Because you're looking hot. Exactly. But so she smirks, right? And I say, hey, I'm so proud of you. You deserve it. Couldn't have happened to a better person, this, that, and the other. So I start asking her, what are you doing with the extra money? I mean, you got all this money now. What are you doing? She's like, nothing, And I said, well, what's been the biggest change? And she says, the biggest change has really been, I don't worry about paying my bills anymore. I've got so much money that I don't even worry about it. I said, are you going to buy another car? No. You're going to buy a house? I know. I'm not going to do. No, I put a plan together where I can pay the house off in this many years instead of 30. Now it's going to be this, and I'll have all these things paid off. But I'm getting these quarterly checks, bonuses of X amount, and I'm like, gosh, that's a lot of money. And she's like, I look at my statement every quarter and I go, wow. I mean, that's pretty nice. And then she goes back to her day. So what's my point? My point is that even when you chase this substantial money, when you finally get there, it wasn't like she was doing backflips and talking about the trips to Maui she's planning on taking or the 3 cars she's going to buy. She kind of found that the only really big difference between, making it by and now thriving very well is just the fact that she has such a big cushion to where she don't have to worry about the things a lot of us have to worry about. Like, am I going to be able to scrape together my next rent payment? Right. She doesn't have to worry about those things. So there's a freedom there. There's a solace there. But as far as happiness, I mean, you can kind of figure it out yourself. I mean, she's happy. She don't have to worry about her bills, but it's not bringing her the happiness that I think that we all are expecting it to bring. That's the point I'm trying to drive home. So I want people to really be careful of chasing money and that being the ultimate happiness, because I think a lot of us are going to really be upset whenever we achieve that and it doesn't bring us what we want. I'll tell you another story. I can think of a good friend of mine. I knew him for, over 10 years. He was a successful financial advisor and ran an established book of business that brought him multiple 6 figures a year. This guy probably only worked 20 to 25 hours a week tops.
Wow.
He's making hundreds of thousands a year and probably works 25 hours a week tops. And when he was there, he barely did anything. I knew him personally. He vacationed multiple times a year and lived a seemingly great life. I was often envious, of his life. And hell, even back in years ago, I became depressed thinking about how hard I had to struggle to make a fraction of what he did. I mean, I was working twice the hours that this guy was working, and he's over here living the life. Over time, I noticed a few things though about him. The first thing I noticed is that he was always on social media complaining and debating everyone on his political views, like always. During that last presidential election, the guy seemed like he lived online and he fought everyone with an opposing view as his. I'm pretty sure that it was all in vain, because honestly, I don't know. I've never known anyone to ever change another person's point of view debating politics online. Maybe it's happened once out there, but I think we spin our wheels. But this guy was just relentless at it. From there, his relationship with his girl, his long-term girlfriend, was terrible. You know, he was with her for many years. She emasculated him, criticized him in public, and like seemingly ran the household. And he dealt with that for years until they finally split. He eventually went out and met like a younger, more fit single mother. She was like a yoga instructor or something. Clearly used him for his money. I don't think he really cared, to be honest.
Yoga instructor.
Yeah, I mean, she had that man all over the world on vacation. They were having the time of their life. They were always out. And you just knew this woman was a handful. Like, just looking at her pictures online, I knew that woman is a handful. But, you know, he's trying to chase what he thinks is going to make him happy. A younger, fitter, hotter little chick, you know? Right. And my friend, he's a really nice guy, a good dude. Not the most masculine guy in the world, but, you know, just a good stand-up dude. But you could always tell he just wasn't happy. His money didn't make him happy. The women in his life likely only loved him for what he could buy them. He argued online too much. He was a little overweight, out of shape. He never felt that he really arrived. And I remember one day out of the blue, I got the news that he had died of a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't have been more than 54.
Uh-oh.
It came as a shock to everybody. All that hard work, all he did to build his business, gone. All for nothing. You know, if he was alive today, I honestly think that he would have wished that he did some things differently. I think he would have wished that he picked better women. I think he would have wished that he had spent more time with his kids, that he got more sun, that he stayed in better shape, he argued less. I think he would really honestly think he wished he would have done some things different. And, you know, I miss him. He was a good man. He made the world a better place, and he's gone far, far too soon. I may not be able to ever bring him back, but what I can do is I can share a story in hopes that we don't all make the same mistakes that he did, you know? So I'm saying that because there's a lot of people that are listening right now that are going through very similar things in their life. They're going through this Groundhog's Day of just wake up, do the work, come home, eat, same show, take a shower, go to bed, rinse, repeat. And you can easily find yourself into a habit of just doing the same things. And it's not going to really bring you a lot of happiness, because happiness means that you have to struggle a little bit. You have to take some risks a little bit. You have to walk on the edge and do some things that are fun and exciting to be happy. While I'm thinking about it, guys, if you can please support the page by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, we would really appreciate it. Be sure to hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button. That way you can be notified when Dad Talk Today goes live. You know, life is really something, because, you know, you strive, you fight, you do what you got to do in order to hit that goal. And then when you get to the prize at the end, you realize that it ain't what you really thought it would be. It's not what it's all cracked up to be, man. You know, it's not as exciting or as pleasurable as you thought it was going to be. But despite that, do you know what most people still do? They still pursue the next one, and then they keep pursuing the next one, and they keep pursuing. And then each time, you know, in the ending each time, realizing that it's just an empty pursuit. I mean, we're just on to the next. It's like a video game, man. You're on to the next level. You know, you're just the rat race, you know? So I honestly no longer believe that chasing happiness is the point of life. I really don't think it is. So if I'm right, then what is it then? You know, that answer is kind of hard, because, you know, just like we talked about 20 minutes ago, the purpose of life is really dependent, or I should say different for you than it might be for me. You know, it reminds me of the image of retirement that some people have, right? Think about what people see as retirement. You know, they not having to earn anything and then doing whatever you want every single day, you know, retire from any stress in life, just kind of enjoying it, you know, enjoying the life. And from what I've heard, you know, from what I've heard of the people that go down that path, they decline very rapidly. If you've noticed,
they do.
Emotionally,
physically,
emotionally,
mentally,
physically, psychologically. You're right. I mean, so Dwayne, I really think that it's because we need stress, we need challenges. Living on the edge is what we are capable of, and moving forward, we've got to move forward or we will decay. Let me tell you this story. Okay, this is a personal story that really hurt my heart. My ex-father-in-law, he was an immigrant from Greece. He was born in Greece. I think he was born early 1900s. When he was a young boy, his village was bombed by the Nazis, and his parents were killed in the bombing. And him and his brother went through a Greek orphanage. And I think that his highest level of education was 8th grade or 6th grade, something like that. Fast forward, he became an adult, made his way to America, met my mother, my ex-mother-in-law. They got married, had who would be my future wife, my ex-wife. And this was now the 70s. And they were living up in Astoria, New York, which is a pretty prominent Greek town. At least it was back then. I think it still is. The entire family, and this is how Greeks are, they all pool their money together. The mother, the father, the grandparents, they all pool their money together. And
is it like My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Is it like that movie?
Just like it.
Was he like the guy with the Windex?
Yes.
Trying to get a visual.
You are correct. Windex and vinegar cures everything from the common cold to your countertops.
All right, I got it in my head now. Perfect.
And remember, I'm half Greek too. Remember my story, right? Yeah. So So I'm pretty familiar with the with the Greek heritage. So they're up in Astoria, New York. The entire family pools their money together, and they have enough money to put a down payment on this rundown mom and pop vacation hotel in Treasure Island, Florida, which is right next to Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Clearwater? It's a pretty like St. Pete, Clearwater area. It's beautiful beaches. Treasure Island is just pretty much right in between the two, just to kind of give you an idea. Back in the 70s, there was nothing there, Dwayne, just nothing but open beaches, a random building here and there. So you have this dying mom and pop hotel in the middle of nowhere. They end up buying this thing, and it becomes a Greek family business from the 70s all the way until they sold it around 2012 or 14, about 10 years ago, something like that. And when you go there now, you can't even like walk 10 paces without hitting the next building. It is nothing but vacation, like hotels. And like, it's just like, it looks like Panama City Beach. I mean, it's just they hit a gold mine, basically, is what I'm saying. Okay. They hit an effing gold mine. And the reason why I'm bringing up the story is because Paul himself, he has a 6th or 8th grade education. He ended up being the maintenance man for this hotel. And the mom, she was the face of the hotel. She spoke better English. So she was in the office. They lived in the office of this hotel. So you go into the door, it rings, there's a counter. If you were to lift the counter and go behind the door, behind the counter, you would go into their living room. They live there, and they've lived there since the 70s. So, Paul was the plumber, the electrician, the carpenter. He was everything because they couldn't afford to hire anyone to come and do it. And there's constant maintenance, right? This man ended up being a master in craft of all those things. He just became an unbelievable craftsman for all those things. I wish I could download his brain. He became pretty jaded because of doing the same job over and over and over again. And all he talked about was buying a house of his own, not living in the hotel of the, that hotel, office hotel. And, retiring. He just was fed up with 40 years worth of this stuff. They finally sell the hotel. I don't know how much money they made. I'm sure it's 7-8 figures. I don't know. Enough for them to never have to worry. I know that for sure. Paul worked over 40 years. And that man, when he was retired, all he did was sit on the couch and watch soccer all day. And they had all the money in the world and all the time in the world to go and vacation the world, but he just didn't want to do it. He was just tired, and he made the excuse of being run down and tired.
Right.
his retirement lasted about a year, and he was diagnosed with cancer.
Ooh.
And he fought cancer for a year and a half, and he passed.
Mm.
His entire life, Dwayne, was a servant of his family, a servant of that hotel, a servant of all the customers. And as soon as that man retired and he took it easy, his body decayed. You know, so is that coincidence? Is there a correlation there? I think that we've all heard enough of these stories to see that there's some sort of correlation between, stress and challenge and keeping your body going, and then you take your foot off the gas and your body just falls apart. God bless him. The man deserves to live to be 150 years old. He really honestly does. But the Lord took him too soon. And I just hate hearing these stories. So when you're looking at chasing happiness, when you're looking at how can you be happier, I don't think that the goal should be, I need to clear all the obstacles in my life away in order for me to be happy. I don't think that's it. Because there's so many stories like Paul's or my female friends or the financial advisor friend of mine, where when you have it easy, you just don't last that long.
No, you're soft. I mean, that's the kind of the cold hard facts. I mean, it's funny as you were telling different stories, I was remembering different things. I don't know, have you ever heard of a book called The Millionaire Next Door?
No.
Came out in the early 2000s. I used to actually, there's a used bookstore here close to me, and I would buy like 10 or 15 of these books, and I would just pass them out to people, usually younger people. But it was a statistical book, which obviously, I'm a data guy, so it appealed to me. But it was this, the author, again, it's called The Millionaire Next Door. Highly recommend it. It's 20 some years old, but all the principles are still valid today. But he was like, I want to know who a millionaire is. Who is that millionaire? And he started doing the research. He put on a big swanky meal at this real nice posh hotel, invited all these millionaires to come out there for caviar and hors d'oeuvres and all that stuff. And pretty much not a lot of people showed up because of where it was at. It was in a real nice area, but a couple people did, and they showed up in cowboy hats, jeans, and work boots. Yeah. And the guy's like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense, because millionaires are, they dress for success, they're, all those things. And so he started talking to the guy, and it got him thinking. And so he changed the way he was going about it and did a deep dive. And the summary of kind of like chapter 1 and 2 and 3 is the millionaires in the United States are first generation. There's really not a lot of old money is generational. They have a small home. They're usually in business for themselves. They usually have they broke it down. It was a Ford 150, and there was a range of years. That was the most common vehicle a millionaire owns. And the theme of it, though, is that they lived below their means. They lived in a lower or middle class area when they could have potentially afforded them. They could have lived in the ritzy area. They just didn't. They didn't keep up with the Joneses. They were humble. They were parts of their community. They did those type of things, and it gave a much different picture on what a millionaire is, because people think of millionaires, they think of who's on TalkTick and InstaSnap and all the Farce Book and all that stuff. I'm getting a Lamborghini, I'm getting a this, I'm getting a that, and that's who your millionaires are. Those aren't your millionaires. Right. They're your humble, hardworking people. And when you were talking about your father-in-law, it reminded me, like, I've learned how to do all those things: plumbing, electrical, drywall, you name it, as when I was younger, because one was poor. And then, of course, when I got married and stuff, I bought a small little home. It was actually $60,000, where, to give you an idea, everybody else, all of our other friends, were buying $200,000 homes. This is 30 years ago, which is ridiculous. But, if something broke, I couldn't afford to fix it. I couldn't hire someone to do it for me. So I had to figure out a way around it. So I learned finances, or I got a Reader's Digest, how to do electricity. And I cracked that book open, and I learned how to do it, and I did it myself, versus paying somebody $1,000 or whatever. And that was one way that I was able to accumulate wealth, was I wasn't servicing it away. That's one of the big issues I see with people today, is no one knows how to do anything. They
Right.
farm out, you name it, they'll farm it out. I mean, maids, and I mean, there's certain things that it makes sense. I mean, I have Walmart deliver my groceries. I ordered online. It gets delivered. It's like $5. It takes a couple hours to do all the grocery shopping. It gets delivered right to my door, and I don't have to put up with people. That is a $5. I will gladly pay that, no problem. But as far as servicing things out, if your electricity or air conditioner or whatever goes bad, I learned how to do those things, and I would do it myself. And that's one of the ways I accumulated wealth and knowledge. Learning how to do stuff is like, okay, this is how I do this. And I see the younger generation especially, but even people in my generation that don't know how to do anything. They live in their own little worlds, and they're chasing that dollar. But when you can make all the money in the world, but if you can't outrun your spending, you're never gonna even make that. I know, kind of the conversation really is how to be content, and how to not chase happiness, i.e., chasing dollars. But as far as generating wealth, when you are servicing all your dollars away, or living credit card, maxing your credit cards out, getting everything on time payments, you're giving all of that money away, because in your lifetime you can only make X amount of dollars. Where's
Right.
that money going to go? And I don't know, I've spent, and as far as kind of a full disclosure, in my younger days, I used to be a liquidator. I used to shut people's businesses down. So I had to learn a lot about finance, and I learned about the behind the scenes and how finance worked. And of course, I'm in the mortgage biz now, but I learned how that worked, and getting your house paid off as soon as possible, and not being in debt, not getting anything on credit. Those things, that is how you generate wealth. I don't know if it's Dave Ramsey's way of doing things as well, which is, kind of weird. He follows all my rules. But, I know I kind of like went off in left field, but I would recommend, everyone get that Millionaire Next Door book, because actually, remind me of something else. In chapter 7, they had two daughters. This guy had two daughters, and he did everything he could for the one daughter, so she didn't have to lift a finger. She was like a little princess. The other daughter, they didn't do squat with them. And 30, 40 years later, the daughter that they gave everything to still gets a $2,000 or $3,000 stipend each month from their family. She's done zero with her life, whereas the other one has put herself through school. She paid her own way, and she's very successful financially, emotionally, every which way possible. And it's to go back to your point, when you're not continually stressing in a good way, and striving to do better and become a better person, and working hard, and doing all those different things, your body atrophies, and you just become dependent, and you become, I don't want to say worthless, but you just become like worthless. I couldn't come up with a better way to say it. That's what I mean. You atrophy. I mean, people. Yeah, when you're talking about people that retire, you could. I've seen people retire, and within 6 months, you see them just go to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
And I mean, we're not meant to do that. I guess don't care, I guess, which way people think about our existence and how we got here and all that stuff. But we weren't designed to atrophy. We were designed to do stuff
Yeah.
and continually better ourselves and learn how to do stuff and share, and do all these different things. And when we, say we're going to sit on our bus and watch TV, 18 hours out of the day, our body atrophies, and we just go to hell in a handbasket.
It's true, and those are some really good tips too about saving money, and I mean, how much money has some of us spent on hiring plumbers to come over, electricians to come over? It's hundreds of dollars, and it
It's
adds up to tens of thousands of
ridiculous.
dollars. I will tell you, I really think that it's good for everybody to know a little bit about the electricity, plumbing, if you feel comfortable doing that. I mean, in today's world where you can literally go onto YouTube and watch a few hours of videos and
Yeah.
figure it out, there's kind of no excuse not to do it, unless you're dealing with something that's probably beyond your capacity. What you want to make sure you're in code as
Yeah, if it's
well.
out of your wheelhouse. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
but for a good 50%, if not more, of the stuff that needs to be done, you can do it yourself and save a ton of money.
I
One
see
of the things,
people. Well, I see people spending hundreds of dollars to replace a faucet.
yeah,
That is ridiculous. ridiculous.
So they spend 200 on the faucet and 200 have installed, you know?
Yeah.
And I tell you, folks, if you learn how to do it, there's a sense of accomplishment and pride that you get knowing that you installed it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, setting aside the financial gain of it, but there's a pride that comes along with it. You know.
Oh yeah.
So you know, I will tell you this little tip. I'll go ahead and give a little shameless plug to Ace Hardware. You know, you've got Lowe's, you got Home Depot, you got Ace Hardware. I never went to Ace Hardware wherever because it's far more expensive than the big box guys.
True.
You know, you're going to pay a couple dollars more. But I ended up going there because it was convenient or something. I paid a premium for it, but I get into the conversation with the people who work there. And let me tell you something. Ace Hardware has plenty of people working to help you. And these people know what they are talking about.
Exactly.
Like they know what they're talking about. I end up having
Totally.
conversations with these guys there. And then I go back and I'm trying to install or fix this thing. And then I don't have the right part or something happened. I go back and he goes, well, here's what happened. Here's what you need. He gives me the right part. I go back, I fix it. Those guys have saved me so much money that I do not care what it costs at Ace Hardware. They will always have my business above Lowe's and Home Depot just because it's worth paying a small premium for the amount of help you get from those guys, because they have literally saved me thousands of dollars. So there's a shameless plug to Ace Hardware. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Keep it up.
Another point, keeping on the big show here, is that look how studly you look to your woman when you swap that out. That's what happened with me. When my wife and I got together, we had to change the kitchen sink out. It was getting bad. It was a guy sink, the stainless steel, no whatever, and she wanted to pretty it up or whatever. And I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I need to sweat some pipe there, get that, cut that off, make that hat. Yeah, give me about a half hour, it'll be knocked out. And she just sat there,
getting all hot and bothered.
Jokingly, she's like, well, I guess I won't need these. But, she was just like, how the hell do you know that? And of course, I looked at her like, well, how the hell do you not? Because again, I was raised where, my dad would come in and go, all right, Dwayne, you need to have this done by the time I get home. He didn't leave me instructions. He's like, this better get done by the time I get home, or he'd leave it on the back of an envelope. That was our InstaSnap back in the day. And you figured it out because you didn't get your ass beat when you got home. But you learned how to do stuff like that. And that helps you process data like as you get older. Like, if you learn how to work on a car, basic stuff. Like I've had all three of the kids work on their cars because I want them to understand how a car, the mechanics of a vehicle, because when something goes wrong, they can go, oh yeah, okay, this, oh yeah, it's got to be this thing. Not believing, the blinker fluid crap that, so many kids today believe, blinker fluid or what, air brake, I can't remember the other.
Yeah, you're right. Blinker fluid.
Yeah, blinker fluid or muffler bearings. That was the other funny one. But, when you learn how to work on stuff, you get the mechanics and how all the stuff is designed. And you're like, oh, I'm hearing a weird noise out of my car when I push the brake down. Oh, it's probably the brake pads. I better go change those before the rotor goes bad on it, or stuff like that. Versus, oh, it's making a weird noise. I turned the radio up as loud as I could until I got to a mechanic who's like, oh yeah, your muffler bearings are bad. It's going to be $3,000. That kind of stuff. And I don't know, that gets into that whole kids today. But learning how to do stuff, it gives you that sense of accomplishment. And while going back to that, when my bonus daughter, when both my boys, when they would fix something on the car, they walked around like, oh yeah, I got stuff figured out. And it's something that they learned, and they can, then the next time something like that happens, they go, oh yeah, that's just your spark plugs. You got to replace those things. You got to gap them right, because the ones that come from AutoZone are crap. You got to re-gap them correctly. And that's how you do this. That type of stuff.
That's cool, man. Yeah. I remember when I was a young boy, I got my first real job when I was about 14 years old. I worked at a retirement home called Senior Meadows, serving food to the elderly. And in my time there, I had many conversations with the old people who lived there, and they would give me, good life advice, things I never thought about before, lessons that, take some some people their entire lives to learn. I had the opportunity to talk to these people who were in the twilight years of their life. And for this podcast in particular, I decided to ask some older people the same question, what is the purpose of life? And I wrote down their answers. So I want to read off a couple things on what some of these people have told me this week when I was asking them asking older people what the purpose of life was. One person said, surely you must have a lot of things to do or think about, people to meet, get back in touch with, places to go, sights to see, but most importantly, get back in touch with yourself. Another person said, for decades, you've been playing the role of father or mother, husband or wife, son or daughter, employee or employer. Your focus has always been on the demands of day-to-day life, your duties and responsibilities to those around you. But now it's time for you to devote and dedicate your life to yourself. Sure, at first you'll feel empty and lost because after so many years of doing for others, it becomes like a habit. When you stop that, little by little, boredom and restlessness may come, but keep shredding your responsibilities a little by little. Allow the next generation to take over. A lot of seniors start to feel useless after retirement or nearing retirement, but don't let that be a problem for you. Don't go out of your way to be useful to others. Don't go out of your way to be useful for others just to compensate for the initial insecurity you may feel. One person said, your value as a person is much more than what you can offer in terms of money or services. Revive old friendships, get a pet, go on travels with groups to new places, learn music, write about your experiences. In fact, do everything you enjoy doing and avoid any feelings of doubt. You've earned it. Now is a time to live by your own personal philosophy and set an example that life remains beautiful even after 60. Another older man had said, the purpose of life is to discover and invent who you truly are and to use that knowledge to help people who come into your life. Another said, to love everyone and to be loved, to cultivate the best in others and help those who are struggling, to have mercy and uphold justice. One person said, answering this is easy. Just live life to the greatest experience anyone can have. You have no choice either. It's a transitionary experience. If you did not exist, you could never amass memories and love another person or enjoy the feelings of just being here. These were a few words from, some folks that have lived long lives and are in their twilight years. They've actually done, Dwayne, actual end of life surveys with people, and they ask them what they regret. And, people don't regret what they did that didn't work. They regret what they didn't do that could have worked. They regret the chances they didn't take. That's been the common denominator that when they do these end of life surveys, that people oftentimes will tell you that they regret. They don't regret the things that did not work in their life. So they're not like we are. It's ironic that when we're in our best years, we are avoiding trying new things because of fear of failure.
Yeah.
But the older people on their deathbed are telling us that that's actually not a regret of mine. I never regretted the things that I did that did not work. I actually regretted what we didn't do that could have worked.
Yeah.
So
wasn't it like Queen? I can't remember her name. She famously quoted as all of my possessions for another moment of time when she was on her deathbed. I'm trying to remember who. I can't remember who it was, and I believe it was attributed to her. But yeah, she's on her deathbed, and she said, she had obviously every bit of wealth that you can imagine, and she would trade everything for just one more moment of life there. And I've been torn between that and kind of bringing up another thing. Now, you had mentioned it was a retirement home, and you're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Was that Sophia you were talking to, or Blanche?
Probably one of both. Yeah, Sophia,
okay.
Blanche,
Okay.
from the Golden Girls.
From the Golden Girls. Sorry,
I gotcha. I caught on to the joke. Yeah, when you think about things that people, when you think about things that mean a lot to happiness, right? You will think about the relationships that you have. You'll think about the careers that you have, possibly. You'll think about your personal health. You'll think about the money that you have amassed. You'll think about, your relationship with God, things like that. I oftentimes think about which one of those are the most important. And it's really hard to determine which one is the most important, but setting aside the emotional part of it, and I just think logically, it kind of has to be health, because if you're unhealthy, you can't do any of the others.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's health, because health has to be the foundation of it, because you won't be around to have a relationship with the Lord, go to church on Sundays, preach the Bible, learn the Bible, if you're not healthy and you're not here anymore. You can't do any of these things if your health is awful. And it's one of those things, health, that is, it's one of those things that are so fleeting, and we don't pay attention to them because we take it for granted. And then when we get into our 50s and 60s and 70s and our health starts to decline, I mean, there are people that just want to be able to stand up on their own without the assistance of a device. There are people that just want to be able to fall asleep as normally as you and I fall asleep.
Not me. I'm having to do the old bed, pillow, CPAP machine, and
So even you personally, your sleep is altered, with different
sleep
functioning
apnea.
beds and CPAPs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're going through it yourself, and without that assistance, you'd probably have an awful night's sleep, and you'd probably have high blood pressure comes from not getting good airwaves and things like that. So my point is that I really think that the first place we got to start is making sure that we are taking care of our own health, because none of the other ones I mentioned that are extremely important can take place if you're not around.
Right. Yeah.
So think about bettering your health if you're looking for a place to start. Some of us, we have been putting that off far too long. If you're interested in knowing a little bit more about how to eat right or train in a health club, take a look at the podcast Dwayne and I did last Sunday. We did an entire podcast on health and wellness. That'll help. If you're wondering how suffering and challenges can help make a person happier, then 2 weeks ago, take a look at our podcast that we did about suffering and chosen and unchosen suffering, how suffering helps you become a better man or a better person. A lot of these podcasts that we're doing, these teaching guys, these are all intertwined. And when you watch over a couple months of the podcast we do, it will help increase your overall quality of life. Not just one podcast is going to make necessarily a life-altering change in your lifestyle, but when you start to really listen to the week after week, you'll start to kind of understand that, hey, these guys might be on to something. These guys have lived some really interesting lives. Dwayne has lived an interesting life. Jimmy's lived an interesting life. And, if we just follow some of these teachings, it can improve what I've got going on in addition to what I already know myself. So I want you guys to do me a favor. And if you're looking at how to improve some facets in your life, take a look at some of the podcasts that Dwayne and I have done over the last couple months and pick one that you think is would pertain to you. And really dive into it, because I really think you'll be able to benefit from that. Go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, and one, not to sound blasphemous, and two, not to, and I am serious about this comment, and I know it's going to kind of maybe come off kind of funny. We'll see how it goes. But I don't know if you're familiar with the Prodigal Son.
A little bit, yep.
Okay,
that's a TV show.
No, the Bible.
Sorry. Sorry.
It was.
I'm familiar with the TV show. Sorry.
So anyway, in the Bible, and there's a famous painting. God, I'm trying to remember the guy's name that painted it, and it just escaped me. But there, again, the prodigal son. Again, story event about the son that leaves. He demands his inheritance now, leaves, squanders it all, and then he's sleeping in pigs. He comes back. And he thinks that maybe his father, the king, will let him, sleep with the pigs or whatever. Well, the king jumps from his chair, puts a ring on him, again signifying, nothing's changed or whatever. But with the kind of what I'm getting, that's a prodigal son kind of story event thing. But the prodigal son, there was a painting, and it's like a multifaceted thing where you have the king, and then you have three of the sons, the different sons, and how they look. And where I'm going with it, trying to pull it all together here, is that there are times in your life that you're going to look at something from one perspective, and then you'll, at a different point in your life, you'll look at a different perspective. And that's how you're supposed to look at this painting. God, it starts with a P. I can't remember his name. Still lost there. But kind of what I'm getting at is like listening to the Big Show over the weeks. There are times that you'll want to come back to it, like one week where you're having a low week and you're not feeling, say, physically healthy. There's a podcast you can watch from the show that talks, about health, and there's one that's going to be talking about, spirit, mind, and getting yourself right in this area, and you're going to look at it from that perspective on one weekend or at a different time. And I would just kind of say for people to kind of go back and listen to them. To different podcasts at different times, a couple times, because you're going to pull something from it. I don't know if you're a Bible reader or not, but when you've read the Bible as a youngster, you're going to read it differently then as when you're, older, you're married or a parent or go through grief or whatever. You're going to read those passages. They all have kind of one meaning, but you're going to read them from a different perspective. Same thing with the show. You can watch it and kind of glean different nuggets of truth and fact out of those different podcasts. So I would just kind of urge people to go back and watch them at different times and kind of pull those kernels out there. Not trying to equate the show to the Bible or anything like that, but
no, it's definitely, yeah, no, well said. So I did a little quick Google search of the Prodigal Son, and both my TV show and Luke 15:11 pop up at the same time. So we both were right.
Yeah. Right. I think the one is where the show is where like he's the killer and the detective. Yeah. He was the guy from The Walking Dead that I liked. I think it was Jesus. So kind of weird how all that.
Right. You're right. Yeah. So the prodigal son appears in Luke 15:11 in the Bible. The story is about how a father left his fortune to the younger of his two sons. The son's journey into a far country, spends his fortune, and has wasted it all. Then the son comes back to his father. He celebrates that he is back and safe. That's pretty much what the
that's the thing there, and kind of what all that signifies. But there was a famous painting, starts with a P. Not Pascal, not it's gonna bug me. Let me see if I can.
The Prodigal Son painting.
Yeah. Okay, I gotta go there.
All right.
Prodigal Son painting. Rembrandt, really? Okay, I'm getting
Rembrandt's.
Old. Yeah. All right, I'm old. Anyway, it's a famous painting, and one of the things, and again, I know it's weird coming from a kid that grew up in a small little town in Missouri, and I'm a big redneck, but I do have a little bit of, whatever in me. But this is a painting that you are really supposed to look at, especially at different times of your life, or when you're sitting there, look at it from each of their perspectives, and you basically pull something from each thing there. I know we're going off on a way out. I read a lot. I do. I think
that's good stuff, man. But in closing, what we can learn from these people who I was talking about earlier that was sharing their end of life thoughts with us. I think that we can learn that regret is probably the number one feeling they all share. Whenever you look at these end of the life surveys that people have done with people who are just about to enter their twilight years and pass on, that number one feeling is regret. They regret losing relationships. They regret neglecting their health. They regret not taking that trip. They regret not taking that risk. If you think about it, they regret being complacent and playing it safe.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we were talking about before. You see, that's what I meant a couple weeks ago whenever I did the podcast about suffering. We avoid taking action to spare ourselves from failure because it's painful, it's embarrassing. But at what cost do we spare ourselves from that? It's at the cost of being complacent. So what we have to do is we have to walk the edge to feel alive, folks. We've got to suffer to be proud of our accomplishments, because if you believe the retirement theory, right, then that means that, we go through some challenges when we're working. Now we don't have these challenges. We're in retirement. Our health goes straight into the tubes.
Pooper. Yeah.
So, suffer and be proud of your accomplishments. You don't want to have challenges that's too much for you to bear, but you want to have challenges that is within your ability to bear them. Don't avoid challenges, don't avoid pain, don't avoid suffering, and especially don't avoid them because of the fear of failure or what people will think about you, because you don't want to be an old man or old woman on a rocking chair looking back and having regret that you didn't do things that could have panned out differently for you. If you think about it, we do it in our teachings to our children. We all know what's likely to happen if we give our children everything they want and desire. We know. Yeah. So we force a small bit of suffering or challenge to them in order to develop them into adults. So why don't we do the same thing for ourselves? So folks, this week here, I want you to really ponder that over. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling out, if you're feeling like a little bit unhappy, don't be afraid of really thinking about the areas of opportunity in your life that you can look at and say, hey, I want to enhance these areas. And when you do, embrace the pain, embrace the suffering, embrace the challenge, because I promise, you measure your success by what you had to give up in order to achieve it. Folks, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to today's episode of The Big Show, hosted by me, Jimmy Smith. Alongside of me is my co-host and the host of Pissed Off Parent, Dwayne Ward. Keep pushing to be the best version of yourself that you can be. The Big Show is a podcast that's here every Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. We'll see you guys next week for another episode of The Big Show. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you guys soon.